I should have left the basement door alone. That's what I keep telling myself now, but how could I have known? The door wasn't even supposed to open. The landlord had said it was sealed shut years ago, just a remnant from when the building was originally constructed. Don't worry about it, he'd said with a dismissive wave. It doesn't go anywhere anymore. 3 weeks into living in my new apartment, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that door. It was a simple wooden door at the end of the hallway, unremarkable except for the strange carvings along its frame faint. Symbols that looked almost like letters from an alphabet I didn't recognize. I'd run my fingers over them absent-mindedly whenever I passed by, wondering what they meant. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was 3:17 am, I know, because I checked my phone when the sound woke me. A long, drawn-out creak that seemed to echo through my entire apartment. The kind of sound that immediately tells you something is wrong. I lay frozen in bed, listening. My apartment was dead silent, that peculiar kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for something. Then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of hinges that haven't been oiled in decades. The basement door was opening by itself. I should have stayed in bed. I should have called anyone. Instead, I did what every character in a horror movie does. I got up to investigate. The hallway was darker than usual that night. The street lamp outside my window that usually cast a faint glow throughout my apartment seemed dimmer somehow. As I crept down the hallway, the floorboards creaked beneath my feet, each sound impossibly loud in the stillness. And there it was, the basement door standing open about 6 inches. No draft could have moved it. It was too heavy. I stood there staring at it, my heart hammering against my ribs. A cold draft seeped out from the gap, carrying a musty, earthy smell I hadn't noticed before. Hello, my voice sounded small and pathetic even to my own ears. Of course, no one answered. I pushed the door open wider with my fingertips. Beyond was nothing but darkness, a perfect, absolute darkness that seemed to swallow the beam of my phone's flashlight. The stairs leading down were old wood, worn smooth in the middle from years of use. I took one step down, then another. The wood groaned beneath my weight as if in warning. The basement was nothing special, just a small, square room with concrete walls and a dirt floor. No hidden passages, no mysterious artifacts, nothing but some old shelves with dusty mason jars and a broken chair in the corner. I let out the breath I'd been holding and laughed at myself. What had I expected? A portal to another dimension? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was too cold down there, much colder than it should have been even for a basement. And there was a smell subtle, but distinct like wet soil and something else I couldn't quite identify. I hurried back up the stairs, pulled the door firmly shut, and went back to bed. I told myself it was nothing, the building settling, maybe. A change in air pressure that had caused the door to open. But when I woke up the next morning, something had changed. The air in my apartment felt heavier somehow, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. And as I made coffee in the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision, a dark shape moving just out of sight. When I turned, nothing was there. That was the beginning. Small things at first so small, I could almost convince myself I was imagining them. Objects not quite where I'd left them. Cold spots in rooms that had been warm moments before. The persistent feeling of being watched when I was alone. I started taking photos of my apartment before leaving for work, just to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. When I'd return, subtle things would be different, a book tilted at a different angle on the shelf, a cup moved from one side of the sink to the other. Never anything dramatic, just enough to make me question my sanity. A week after the door had opened, I invited my friend Mia over for dinner. I needed someone else in the space, someone to validate what I was experiencing. "Your place has a weird vibe," she said almost immediately after arriving. I felt a rush of vindication. "You feel it too?" "I've been thinking I'm going crazy," she shrugged. "It's probably just because it's old." These pre-war buildings always feel a little off. I wanted to tell her about the door, about the strange things happening, but I held back. Even to my own ears, it sounded ridiculous. Instead, I gave her a tour, casually ending at the basement door. "What's down there?" she asked. "Just a basement. Nothing interesting." As the words left my mouth, we both heard a soft thud from behind the door, like something heavy falling onto the dirt floor. Mia's eyes widened. "What was that?" "Probably just the building settling," I said, repeating what I'd been telling myself for days. But I didn't believe it anymore. After she left, I sat on my couch staring at the basement door down the hallway. It remained closed, innocent looking in the lamplight. But now I knew better. Something had changed that night when the door had opened. Something had gotten out, or perhaps I had let something in. That night, I dreamed of the basement. In the dream, I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, but the basement wasn't empty anymore. In the center of the dirt floor was a hole perfectly round and so deep I couldn't see the bottom. And from within that hole came whispers too, faint to make out the words but unmistakably calling my name. I woke up drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around my legs as if I'd been thrashing in my sleep. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:17 a.m., the same time I'd heard the door open that first night. And then I realized I wasn't alone in the room. I couldn't see anything in the darkness, but I could feel a presence, something standing in the corner watching me. The air felt thick and charged, like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. I lay perfectly still, afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. Slowly, I reached for the lamp beside my bed. When the light flooded the room, the corner was empty. But on the floor were muddy footprints, small, like a child's, but oddly misshapen. They led from the corner to my bed, stopping just inches from where I lay. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, light on, watching the empty corner until dawn broke. The footprints remained until morning, then vanished as the sunlight touched them, evaporating like morning dew, leaving no trace they had ever been there. I began researching the building's history, hoping to find some explanation. It had been built in the 1920s, originally as a single-family home before being converted to apartments in the 60s. Nothing in its past suggested anything unusual, no tragic deaths, no mysterious disappearances. But I kept digging, spending hours in the local library's archives. And that's when I found the newspaper clipping from 1943. A small paragraph about a child who had gone missing from the house, a 4-year-old boy who had vanished without a trace. The article mentioned that he was last seen playing near the basement. As I stared at the grainy black and white photo of the house, my apartment building, I noticed something in one of the windows. A small, dark shape that could have been a smudge on the photograph or a trick of the light. But I knew what it was. The same silhouette I had been catching glimpses of in my apartment. I knew then that whatever had come through that basement door wasn't going to leave. And worse, I was beginning to suspect it didn't want me to leave either. After finding that newspaper clipping, something changed. It was like whatever was in my apartment knew I had discovered its secret. The subtle movements and cold spots were just the beginning. Now it wanted me to know it was there. The first Time I clearly saw it was 3 days after my library visit. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, and not really paying attention to my surroundings. As I leaned forward to spit into the sink, I caught movement in the mirror. Not my movement, something behind me. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, eyes locked on the reflection. There, in the doorway of the bathroom, was a dark silhouette. It wasn't quite human-shaped, too thin, the proportions all wrong. It stood perfectly still, as if waiting for me to notice it. When I spun around, the doorway was empty. But I had seen it, and somehow I knew it had wanted me to see it. That night, I finally broke down and called Mia. "I need you to come over," I told her, my voice shaking. "There's something in my apartment." She arrived 40 minutes later, concern etched across her face. I told her everything, the door opening by itself, the footprints, the research, and finally, the figure in the mirror. "I think I'm being haunted by the ghost of that missing kid," I said, immediately regretting how ridiculous it sounded out loud. To her credit, Mia didn't laugh. "Let's document it," she suggested. "If something's really here, maybe we can catch it on camera." We set up her digital camera in the living room facing the hallway with the basement door. We placed my phone camera in the bathroom, pointed at the mirror. Then we waited. Nothing happened while Mia was there. The apartment felt normal, almost peaceful. After 4 hours of sitting in tense silence, she had to leave. "Look," she said at the door, "send me whatever the cameras pick up. Try to get some sleep. And if you get too freaked out, come stay at my place." As soon as she left, the atmosphere changed. The air grew heavy again, that now familiar feeling of being watched returning with suffocating intensity. I checked both cameras. They were still recording. That night was the longest of my life. I sat on the couch staring down the hallway at the basement door, jumping at every creak and groan of the building. Around a.m., I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by the sound of the bathroom faucet turning on. I checked the time, 3:17 a.m. Again. The bathroom light was off, but I could hear water running. Summoning every ounce of courage, I walked to the bathroom door and flipped on the light. The faucet was running full blast, steam rising from the hot water filling the sink. As I moved to turn it off, I saw it a handprint on the fogged mirror. A small handprint like a child's, but with elongated fingers that looked more like claws. I ran back to the living room and grabbed Mia's camera. When I returned to the bathroom, the handprint was gone, the mirror clear despite the steam still rising from the sink. The next morning, I reviewed the footage from both cameras. Mia's camera had stopped recording at exactly 3:16 a.m., 1 minute before I woke up. The battery was completely drained despite having been fully charged. My phone had fared even worse. It was dead and wouldn't turn on for hours, no matter how long I charged it. I was desperate for someone to believe me, to validate what was happening. I called my brother, who lived 3 hours away. "It sounds like you've got a carbon monoxide leak," he said after I explained everything. That would explain the feelings of being watched, the objects moving, even the visions. "Get a detector today." I did. The detector showed normal levels. No carbon monoxide, no gas leak, no logical explanation for what was happening to me. That night, I barricaded the basement door with my heavy bookshelf. It took all my strength to push it in front of the door, but I felt safer knowing nothing could come through. I went to bed early, exhausted from lack of sleep and constant fear. The dream came again: the basement, the hole in the floor, the whispers. But this time, I could make out words among the whispers. "Found you. Found you. Found you. I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing. The clock read 3:17 a.m., and I wasn't in my bed. I was standing in front of the basement door. The bookshelf that I had pushed in front of it was now against the opposite wall, as if it had been thrown there. The door was wide open, darkness spilling out like black ink. I backed away slowly, unable to tear my eyes from the open doorway. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time, a small figure standing at the bottom of the stairs. It had the general shape of a child, but there was something profoundly wrong about it. Its limbs were too long, its head slightly too large, its proportions distorted like a reflection in a carnival mirror. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring up at me with eyes I couldn't see in the darkness. I slammed the door shut and ran from my apartment, not stopping until I reached my car. I spent the rest of the night there, shivering in the cold, watching my apartment windows from the parking lot. Just before dawn, I saw a small shadow move past my bedroom window, as if pacing back and forth, waiting for me to return. I called in sick to work and drove to Mia's place. She listened to my story without interruption, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "You can stay here as long as you need," she said when I finished. "But you should consider talking to someone professional about this. Maybe there's a psychological explanation." I knew what she was thinking, that I was having some kind of breakdown. Part of me wished she was right. That afternoon, we went back to my apartment together to pack some of my things. Everything seemed normal in the daylight. The bookshelf was back against the wall where it belonged, the basement door firmly closed. If Mia hadn't been with me, I might have convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. As I packed clothes into a duffel bag, Mia explored the apartment, looking for anything unusual. "Hey," she called from the kitchen, "have you been drawing on your windows?" I froze. What? In the condensation of the kitchen window was a series of symbols, the same strange markings that adorned the basement door frame. "I didn't do that," I whispered. As we stared at the symbols, they began to fade, the condensation evaporating unnaturally fast until the window was clear again. "We need to leave," Mia said, her skepticism finally giving way to genuine fear. Now, as we hurried to the door, I glanced at my phone screen and stopped cold. There, reflected in the dark glass of my phone, was not my face, but the distorted childlike figure, its head tilted curiously as if studying me. I dropped the phone with a cry. When Mia picked it up, the screen showed only her worried reflection. "It's following me," I said, my voice breaking. "It's not just in the apartment. It's attached to me somehow. Whatever had come through that basement door wasn't contained by walls or distance. It had found me, and I was beginning to understand it had no intention of letting me go. I stayed at Mia's apartment for 3 days. 3 days of relative normality that almost convinced me I'd imagined everything. Almost. Because even in the safety of her home, I could feel it. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck when I was alone. The fleeting shadows in my peripheral vision. The sudden, inexplicable cold spots that seemed to follow me from room to room. "You're safe here," Mia would say, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, especially after the incident with her bathroom mirror. We'd been watching a movie when I excused myself to use the restroom. As I washed my hands, I deliberately kept my eyes down, avoiding the mirror. But then I heard a soft tapping sound, like fingernails against glass. 1 tap, 2 taps, 3. Slowly, I raised my eyes to the mirror. The reflection showed me pale and terrified, but also something else, a message written in the condensation. Behind me, 3 words. "Take me home," I screamed. Mia came running. By the time she burst through the door, the message was gone, the mirror clear and ordinary. That night, I overheard her on the phone with someone. "I'm worried about them," she whispered. "It's like they're having some kind of breakdown. Should I call someone? Like a doctor?" I couldn't blame her. I was starting to doubt my own sanity too. But then came the bruises. 5 small bruises on my ankle, finger marks, as if someone had grabbed me in my sleep. Someone with hands too small to be an adult's. I showed Mia the next morning. She couldn't deny the physical evidence, the distinct pattern of 4 fingers and a thumb clearly visible in the purpling flesh. "I know someone who might be able to help," she said finally. "She's a bit unconventional, but she knows about this kind of thing." Elena was not what I expected. No crystal balls, no flowing robes, just a middle-aged woman in jeans and a sweater with eyes that seemed to see right through you. She listened to my story without interruption, her expression never changing. When I finished, she nodded once. "It's a collector," she said simply. "A type of entity that attaches itself to people. It doesn't just haunt places, it haunts people. What does it want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena's eyes met mine. It wants you," she explained that collectors were entities that existed in the spaces between our world and somewhere else. They found people who acknowledged them, who saw them, and they became fixated. Over time, they would drain their victims of energy, of life force, until there was nothing left. The basement in your apartment was probably a thin spot, a place where the barrier between worlds is weaker. When the door opened, it let this thing through. How do I get rid of it? I asked. "You might not be able to," she replied, "but we can try to strengthen the boundaries between you and it. Buy you some time." The ritual was simple but unsettling. Salt circles, burning herbs, words in a language I didn't recognize. Throughout it all, I could feel the air growing thick and heavy, that now familiar presence intensifying as if in anger. As Elena finished the final words of the ritual, every light in Mia's apartment flickered violently. A glass sitting on the coffee table shattered spontaneously. And for just a moment, I swear all 3 of us saw it, a dark, child-sized figure standing in the corner of the room, its form distorted and wrong. Then it was gone, and the air felt lighter. "That should help for a while," Elena said, her voice slightly shaken. "But it's strong. It's been feeding on your fear. And it won't give up easily." That night, I slept without dreaming for the first time in weeks. When I woke up, I felt almost normal. The constant sensation of being watched had diminished to a faint awareness, like a sound just at the edge of hearing. Emboldened by this small victory, I decided to go back to my apartment. Not to stay, just to collect more of my things. Mia offered to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. The apartment was exactly as we'd left it. Nothing moved, nothing disturbed. Even the basement door remained firmly closed. For a moment, standing in the sunlight streaming through my living room windows, I almost laughed at myself. Had I really been so terrified of this ordinary place? On impulse, I decided to check the local records office. If I was going to understand what was happening to me, I needed to know more about the history of my building, about the child who had disappeared. What I found chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just one child who had disappeared. Over the decades, there had been others, tenants who had vanished without explanation, leaving behind their belongings, their lives. The most recent was just 3 years ago, a graduate student who had rented my exact apartment. According to the police report, his friends reported that in the weeks before his disappearance, he had complained about strange noises coming from the basement. When I returned to my apartment that evening to finish packing, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the rooms. As I stuffed clothes into my suitcase, I kept glancing down the hallway at the basement door. It remained closed, innocent-looking in the fading light. I was almost finished when I heard it a soft creak from down the hall. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the ordinary sounds of an old building settling. I zipped up my suitcase and turned to leave. That's when I saw it on the wall next to me, a shadow. Not my shadow. It was small, child-sized, but twisted and wrong in subtle ways. It moved independently of any light source, its head tilted as if curious. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. The shadow followed, moving across the wall, then onto the ceiling, defying all laws of physics. "What do you want?" I whispered. The shadow stopped moving. Then slowly, it raised one distorted arm and pointed directly at me. I ran. I didn't stop to grab my suitcase or turn off the lights. I just ran. I made it as far as the front door before I felt it ice cold, fingers wrapping around my ankle. I crashed to the floor, my chin hitting the hardwood with enough force to make me see stars. Something was dragging me backward. Something I couldn't see, but could feel small hands with surprising strength pulling me inch by inch toward the basement door, which now stood wide open. I screamed and clawed at the floor, my fingernails breaking as I desperately tried to find purchase. The invisible force pulled relentlessly, dragging me down the hallway toward the darkness of the open basement. Just before I reached the threshold, I managed to grab the door frame, holding on with every ounce of strength I had left. The pulling stopped abruptly, and then I felt a hot breath against my ear, and a voice, high and childlike, yet somehow ancient, whispering, "You saw me. Now you're mine." The force released me suddenly. I scrambled away from the basement door, not stopping until my back hit the opposite wall. The door slowly swung shut with a decisive click. On my ankle, clearly visible even in the dim light, was a perfect handprint, small like a child's, but with elongated fingers that ended in points rather than rounded tips. It wasn't a bruise this time. It was a burn, the skin red and blistered in the distinct shape of a hand. Physical proof that I wasn't imagining any of this. Physical proof that whatever was following me could hurt me. And I was beginning to understand it. Was just getting started. I didn't go back to Mia's apartment that night. I couldn't risk bringing the thing to her home again. Instead, I checked into a motel 20 miles away, hoping the distance might weaken its connection to me. It didn't. The first night at the motel, I woke, you guessed it, 3:17 a.m. to find all the furniture rearranged. The chair, the small desk, even the heavy dresser had been moved to form a perfect circle around my bed, as if something had been pacing around me while I slept. By morning, my resolve had hardened. I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to fight this thing. I called Elena and told her what had happened. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You need to understand what you're dealing with," she finally said. "Collectors are ancient. They exist by taking essence from people. Energy, life force, soul, whatever you want to call it. They start by marking their victims, which it's already done to you, and then they slowly drain them until there's nothing left. How do I kill it?" I asked. "You don't," she replied simply. "You can't kill something that isn't alive in the way we understand life. But there may be a way to break its connection to you." According to Elena, There was only one known way to escape a collector: complete denial of its existence. No acknowledgement, no fear, no reaction to anything it did. If I could truly convince myself it wasn't real, it might lose its hold on me. It feeds on your recognition, your fear, she explained. Without that, it can't maintain its connection to our reality. It sounded too simple, too easy. But I was desperate enough to try anything. I returned to my apartment the next day. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, my suitcase still open on the bed, light still on. The basement door remained closed. I stood in the center of my living room and spoke aloud to the empty air. You're not real. I don't believe in you. I don't see you. I don't fear you. The words felt hollow even to my own ears. How could I not believe in something that had physically burned me? Something I had seen with my own eyes. That night, it made sure I knew exactly how real it was. I woke to find dozens of my personal items arranged in a perfect spiral on the floor books. Clothes, photos, toiletries, everything I owned spiraling outward from the center of my bedroom. At the very center was a single photograph. My childhood photo, taken from my wallet. But my face had been scratched out. I forced myself to ignore it. I methodically picked up each item and put it away without comment, without visible reaction, even as my hands trembled. When I was done, I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling, repeating my new mantra: you're not real. I don't believe. In you, the entity's attempts to get my attention grew more aggressive. Whispers became hisses. Cold spots became freezing gusts that rattled the windows. Small objects would fly across the room, crashing into walls. The shadow would dance openly across my walls, no longer hiding. Still, I persisted in my denial. You're not real. I don't see you. I don't fear you. After 3 days of this psychological warfare, Mia came to check on me. She hadn't heard from me since I'd left her apartment, and she was worried. The moment she walked through my door, her face went pale. "What's that behind you?" she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. I didn't turn around. I kept my expression neutral and said, "There's nothing there, Mia," but I could feel it standing directly behind me, its cold presence sending shivers down my spine. "Are you kidding me?" Mia's voice rose hysterically. "It's right there. A child, but wrong somehow. It's looking right at me." I reached out and took her hands. "Mia, listen to me. You need to leave. Now. Don't acknowledge it. Don't look at it. Just go." The fear in her eyes told me she finally believed everything I'd told her. She backed toward the door, her gaze still fixed on whatever stood behind me. "I'm calling someone," she said. "A priest, an exorcist, someone who can help you after." She left. I felt the entity's rage like a physical force. The temperature in the apartment plummeted until I could see my breath. The lights flickered wildly. Glass in the picture frames cracked one by one. "You're not real," I said steadily, even as a book flew off the shelf, narrowly missing my head. "I don't see you. I don't fear you." That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, refusing to sleep. I knew it was waiting for that moment of vulnerability. The hours crawled by, but I maintained my vigil. At 3:16 a.m., 1 minute before its usual arrival time, the power went out. Not just in my apartment, the entire street went dark. In the sudden silence, I could hear soft footsteps circling my bed. The weight of its presence was suffocating. "You're not real," I whispered into the darkness. "I don't see you. I don't fear you." A child's laugh echoed through the room, but distorted, wrong, like a record played at the wrong speed. Something cold brushed against my cheek. And then the clock ticked over to 3:17 a.m. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember anything after that laugh. But when I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in my bedroom. I was in the basement. I lay on the cold dirt floor, the smell of damp earth filling my nostrils. The single bare bulb overhead cast harsh shadows in the small space. And there, in the center of the floor, was something that hadn't been there before, a perfect circle of disturbed earth, as if something had been recently buried, or as if something had emerged. Around the circle were arranged personal items not mine. A woman's hairbrush with strands of red hair, a man's watch, a college ID card, a child's teddy bear, belongings of the others who had disappeared from this building over the years. The basement door at the top of the stairs was open, daylight spilling down the steps. I scrambled toward it, my heart pounding. As I reached the bottom step, I saw something scratched into the wooden riser, crude letters carved into the wood. "You're mine now." I ran up the stairs and burst into my apartment, gasping for air. Everything looked normal, ordinary. But I knew now what I was dealing with. This thing, this collector, it had taken others before me. It had been doing this for decades, perhaps centuries. And now it had marked me as its next victim. My phone rang. It was Mia. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You've been radio silent for 3 days." "I've been calling and texting 3 days?" I looked at the date on my phone in disbelief. Somehow, I'd lost 3 entire days. "I'm leaving," I told her. "Today. I'm going to stay with my brother across the country. I need to get as far away from this place as possible." But even as I said the words, I knew distance wouldn't save me. The entity had followed me to Mia's apartment, to the motel. It would follow me anywhere. As I packed a small bag, I caught a glimpse of movement in my bedroom mirror. The childlike silhouette stood directly behind me, more solid than I'd ever seen it before. For the first time, I could make out features hollow. Eyes, a stretched smile that was too wide for its face. Our eyes met in the reflection. Its smile widened. Impossibly. My hands shook as I zipped up my bag. "You're not real," I whispered one last time without conviction. "I don't see you. I don't fear you, but I did see it. I did fear it. And it knew." I'm recording this now as a warning. I've tried running. I've tried fighting. I've tried denying its existence. Nothing works. The basement door opened, and now something follows me everywhere I go. If you ever move into an apartment with a sealed basement door, leave it alone. Some doors are meant to stay closed. And if you start noticing small things moving on their own, if you feel watched when you're alone, if you catch glimpses of shadows that shouldn't be there, don't acknowledge them. Don't look directly at them, because once they know you can see them, they'll never leave you alone. I have to go now. It's standing in the corner watching me. And somehow, I know that today is the day it finally takes me home. Have you ever felt something watching you from empty corners? Have you ever seen movement where nothing should be moving? Share your experiences in the comments below. And remember, some things follow you home. What would you have done if you were me?